said Pete, when we arrived at our destination. He kept his eyes skyward as he climbed the ladder attached to the wall at the back of the shop. Pete had been acting like some kind of weather expert ever since predicting a tornado last summer. It ripped through Stanley Peterson's farm, dancing between a few grain silos before finally picking up and dropping Stanley's riding lawnmower onto the roof of his burgundy Cadillac. That was the only damage, which is kind of weird when you think about it, especially since people used to say Stanley spent more time with that car than he did with his wife. He used to polish it at least once a day. Pastor Nolan told Dad that it was God's way of punishing Stanley for his vanity. I don't know if that's true, but what I do know is that Stanley started driving a little old rust bucket shortly thereafter. I guess he didn't want to press his luck. Pete's prediction that day wasn't anything special. He'd been making the same one regularly for almost 2 months. He would quirk an eye at the sky and say, "It's going to storm." If it didn't, it was no big deal, and he'd just act like he never said anything in the first place. But if it did happen to storm, he'd look at you all sage-like and say, "See? I told you." "Maybe," I said, as I stepped off the ladder and onto the roof, although the clouds didn't really look stormy to me at all. They had a soft-edged fuzziness about them, not that crisp popcorn shape of growing thunderheads. We made our way to the front of the roof, where the garage overlooks Main Street. Uncle Dean was one of only 2 mechanics in Griever's mill, population 3,004, but even so, the shop was never all that busy. Nobody took any notice of us as we parked our butts and let our legs dangle over the edge. On the sidewalk directly below us was a white chalk circle with a big X through it. This was our target, the landing pad for our seed pods. The first one to hit it would earn himself bragging rights for a whole week, plus the loser would owe him a root beer float. "You go first," Pete told me, as usual. "I always go first," I argued. The wind invariably took the first pod. If I went first, Pete could try to compensate for which way it was blowing. "I went first last time," he lied. Or maybe he was just misremembering. That wasn't uncommon with Pete. "Fine," I said. What Pete didn't realize was that I'd come prepared this time and had a single blade of grass to go along with my propeller leaves. I took it out of my pocket and tossed it into the wind. "Hey, that's cheating, Ben," said Pete. "So is making me go first all the time," I countered. We both watched as the blade of grass landed well left of the target. "Be a cheater then," said Pete. "See if I care. You'll still miss." I probably would. The best either of us had ever done was getting it on our 5th try. "Definitely going to storm," Pete said as I lined up for my drop. "Clouds are already turning black out past the edge of town." "Shh," I said. "I'm trying to concentrate." Pete scoffed. "I bet you don't even land within 10 feet of it." "Not this time," I said, with a sudden certainty that sprang from I don't know where. Somehow I just knew that I wasn't going to miss, that I was going to nail it the first try, like when an athlete gets into the zone and knows he's going to score a goal or get a touchdown. My propeller spun, as if guided by fate, around and around in slow motion, the wind pulling it away and then pushing it back into line again. Its 10-second journey from rooftop to sidewalk felt to me more like 10 minutes, but it finally landed gently at the very center of the X. I let out a whoop while Pete called me a cheater, but my gloating pretty much ended there. When I looked up from the makeshift landing pad, my eyes were immediately drawn to the darkening sky that Pete had mentioned just moments before. Pete?" I said. "I don't think those are clouds." Chapter 2. They definitely weren't clouds. Dust storm? I wondered. But even as the thought took form, I knew it was wrong. What I was seeing looked more like coal smoke, the kind you'd see billowing out from a locomotive, all thick and dark wool and gray. It didn't disperse like smoke, though. It held together as if buffeted by winds from every side, a roiling mass as wide as our town, yet strangely flat, almost pancake-shaped.